Hello. Thank you for watching. Welcome to the Counselors Complex podcast. My name is Jessica Latin. And so I'm going to give it a few minutes, let some more people come on. So please like and share. Thank you for joining. Please like and share, subscribe, do all the things. This is going to be a really good episode. We're going to be talking about boundary setting because I know that that's something that a lot of us struggle with from time to time. Even I have struggled with that um, over the years, but I think I've learned some ways to manage that. So that's what we will be talking about today. So I'll give it a few more minutes to let people join in. Hello, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, follow, share. Feel free to comment if you have any questions or any thoughts about setting boundaries. You can put those in the comment section and I will try to answer those questions. Give it a few minutes. Give it till 8:05 and then we'll get started. If you're just now tuning in, today we will be talking about boundary setting and everything related to that. So, like, share, comment, follow, subscribe. I am live on my personal page, my business page, and my YouTube page. So, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube, check it out. And if you have not seen any of the past episodes, feel free to listen on any of the podcast platforms like Spotify or iTunes. You can also go back and look at all of my episodes on YouTube. So you should get some good information from those previous episodes. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. Please like and subscribe, follow, share this post, and let other people know that we're talking about boundaries today. So if you struggle with setting boundaries or staying consistent or knowing how to create boundaries, this is the episode for you. So we'll give it one more minute, let a few more people come on, and then we'll get started. All right. Um, if you're watching, go ahead and comment where you're watching from. I like to see who all is watching and where they're watching from. I just think it's kind of cool to see who watches me. I know the little things we get excited about. Okay, so today we're just going to jump right into it. We're going to talk about boundaries, okay? Setting them, accepting them, and staying consistent. Thank you to those who are tuning in. Please like, share, and comment, subscribe. Today we're talking about boundary setting and just how to incorporate those in every aspect of our lives. So if you have any questions or if you're having any difficulties with setting boundaries and if you'd like for me to help you, give you some tips on how to set those boundaries pertaining to your particular situation, please comment in the comment section. And yeah, I'm excited to talk about boundaries. Boundaries is hard. Like Boundaries is something that's very hard to master. And this is something that a lot of my clients and even just people I know, just in general, struggle with setting boundaries. Okay. So, um, let's see where to begin. So, boundaries are basically like, what are boundaries? Boundaries are that line in the sand. Um, it's that rule. It's boundaries are like the unspoken rules for our lives, basically. So it's important for us to have boundaries and have rules because if not, then our relationships will just kind of run amok and our lives will just kind of spill over. And we'll be very unhappy. Like generally people that have poor boundaries, they that I see, they have a lot of anxiety, they have a lot of depression because their relationships aren't working, they feel out of control, they feel like a doormat, like they're just kind of being walked over. And so it's just boundaries are very important. And if we don't have boundaries, then we're more than likely going to have some problems to go with it. So, thank you for those who are just joining in. My name is Jessica Latin. I'm the host of the Counselors Complex podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, do all the things. Today, we're going to be talking about boundary setting. Please comment below if you have any problems with boundary setting and you have like a specific question about setting boundaries in your life. I'd be happy to answer it on here. Um, okay, and I'm gonna check to make sure that nobody's commenting. I'm looking at my phone and I'm looking on here too to check comments to make sure that I don't miss anything. So okay, so the first thing that we're going to talk about with setting boundaries is setting boundaries at work. So last time we talked about balancing your mental health in the workplace. So I thought, why not just start off with setting boundaries at work? Because next to being at the house, most of us spend majority of our time at work. So it's important for us to establish and maintain boundaries in the net, like, the either the first or the second place that we spend the most of our time is at work. Um, so a couple of things that I wrote down as far as setting boundaries at work. So one is not taking extra shifts or responsibilities at work. And I know for some of you, you may be like, what? Like, I know the money is calling you, or you might just be afraid to say, no, I can't do that. But sometimes that's what you have to do. Especially like with the jobs that I've had over many years, they're usually pretty mentally complex or stressful jobs they're not necessarily physically draining, but they're mentally draining. So I definitely learned how to set boundaries in my career very early on in my career. For those of you who didn't tune into the last episode, or if you didn't already know me, I used to work for child protection. So that was a very stressful job. And so I had to start implementing some boundaries early on because I started seeing other coworkers around me who were young people, like, in their late 20s and early 30s, and they had a lot of health issues, but it was related to the stress at their job. And so not taking on extra shifts. I know you want more money. I know you want all these things, but is taking that extra shift really worth like your mental health? And if you continue to take extra shifts and don't set that boundary, I've had a lot of people say, like, well, they only ask me to take on an extra shift. They don't ask anybody else. Well, I ask people, well, why are you the only one that they're asking? Is probably because you haven't set any boundaries. You probably always take on the extra shift, so they know who to ask. So stop taking on extra shifts and stop taking on extra responsibilities that you can't do. If your boss asks you to do something at work, um, and you are like kind of bombarded with a whole bunch of other things, or you just don't feel like you have the mental capacity to add anything else onto your plate, then don't do it. And I know I'm saying it like it's easier said than done, but it's going to take you to stand up and just say, no, I can't do that right now, or that doesn't work with my schedule right now, or I want to put my best foot forward and I don't think that I can put as much energy or put my best foot forward, or put my best work in at this time. So I can't take on that project right now, or I can't do that extra shift because I'm really tired and I want to perform at my best. So, those are just some ways instead of just saying flat out no, which that is okay too. I think that is so important for us to understand that we can just say no and we don't necessarily have to have an explanation. So, if somebody asks you, hey, can you work on Saturday? And you say no, you could just leave it at that. But I know like that's we're gonna take baby steps because I know for those of us who do have trouble with setting boundaries, just saying no, just flat out no might be, might be a little rough for you there. But just know that you can just say no and it's okay. Like you're an adult. Nobody's going to punish you for saying no, and you don't have to necessarily explain yourself every time you say no. So I think that's important for us to establish and normalize. Okay, so next, as far as like setting boundaries at work, I would say, and I mentioned this in um the last episode as well. So not checking or responding to calls or emails after hours. I mean, people, if you leave it up to people, like they will call you. And I've had to check myself on this too, like, especially when something is important to me, I don't think about, oh, this person might be busy, or this person might be wanting to enjoy their time off, or this person might be asleep. So, I've had that happen before too, where I just kind of totally disregarded what that person's personal time. So, if you're not careful and you're still responding to emails and calls after 7 p.m. or 8 p.m., then you're going to have people continuously crossing that boundary line and pushing it. And the thing is, when people cross boundaries, they don't just cross boundaries, they leap through that thing and they go as far as you will let them, or they will go as far as they want to go. So they might call you at 11 p.m. Like you just don't know. Like I think I shared with you guys last time. I've had people send me emails at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. But who's answering those emails? Certainly not me. But if I were to start that, then that would open up a can of worms, and people would think that they have access to you at all hours of the night. And I think it is so important for us to let people know that you are not easily accessible. And that's in anything, whether that's work, whether that's in relationships or whatever. You have to just put your foot down and let people know, like, hey, I'm not easily accessible. And so after 7 p.m., even if you do check it, like I know sometimes people have really high anxiety and they gotta see it, they gotta read it, they're not gonna delete their emails off of their phone. Okay, I get it. If you do decide to check it, just don't respond. Like, okay, back to these baby steps. Okay, if you can't just delete the email app entirely from your phone, you can check it, but don't respond. You don't have to respond. Or if somebody calls you, you don't have to answer. Let it go to voicemail. Because whatever they're needing right now, your emergency is not my emergency. Okay? So unless somebody is dying or in the hospital, whatever it is can wait until tomorrow. So that's my little spiel on that. And then also another big, huge one that I think I did talk about in the previous episode as well was taking time off and not working during your breaks. I know there's a lot of people that continuously like work through their lunch break and things like that, but you are going to create a bad habit of not taking time out for yourself, and letting people just come impede on your private time, whether that's your lunchtime or your break time. You're going to give your supervisors and managers the idea that, oh, this is superwoman or this is superman, and they don't have to use a bathroom, they don't have to eat, they don't have to do all the things that human beings do. They're a working machine. And we don't want to give people that impression that we are just work, 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 and we don't take care of ourselves. So stop working through your breaks and through your lunchtime. Like, as a matter of fact, I suggest that people eat in their car or go off somewhere to eat. I know, like, for my teachers, they may not be able to leave campus. I think that's a rule. And if you're a teacher, you can comment and let me know if that's true or not. But I think there is like a rule where teachers can't like go off campus to eat. So if that's the case, like, I suggest that you probably just eat in your car. And really, okay, somebody said that you can't. Yeah, so I think I've had a lot of teachers tell me that they can, so that makes it even harder for the boundary to be set. And even like for my work at home people, sometimes it's very hard to like have um that kind of just draw that line in the sand. Like, I'm not working right now, I'm eating, or I'm doing this. So we setting boundaries at work is crucial. So eat in your car, or go try to have like a certain area to where it's like designated, like, you can't talk to me about work right now. I'm eating. Yeah, I'm taking care of me. And I think that is so, so very important. Okay, so next I'm gonna talk a little bit, and I might flip flop around, so not necessarily going in any particular order. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about setting boundaries with kids. So for those who either have, even if you have children of your own, if you have nephews, if you have grandkids, whatever it may be, kids can be that could be rough. Raising kids is hard. I was just talking to somebody else about this the other day. Like, it looks easy from the outside, but it's actually pretty hard. And I mean, it's not like super hard. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not struggling as far as like in the parenting aspect, but some parts of it is very difficult. And one of those things is boundaries, right? Especially as kids, like, they're so cute and they have their ways to like manipulate and make a sad face, and all those boundaries just go out the window. So it's something that we have to constantly um, work on and push for, because you want to set boundaries with your kids so that they'll grow up um, and respect boundaries of other people as well. Thank you to those who are just now tuning in. Today we're talking about boundaries and how to set boundaries, accept boundaries, and stay consistent in them. So right now we're talking about setting boundaries with kids. So a couple of things that I've just learned from being a parent myself and also working with children. I've worked as a children's counselor for the last I guess 7 or 8 years. I was a foster care worker. So I've just worked with kids for a very long time. So these are some of the things that I've learned for setting boundaries with kids. So hopefully this helps you. Um, so first off, and I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, that your boundaries must grow with the kid. So you can't have the same boundaries for your 8-year old that you have for your 2-year olds. You can't have the same boundaries that you have for your 16-year-old with your 8-year olds. It's just not going to work like that. And you're going to find that you and your child are constantly in conflict. Um, Parenting is not about control. And it's about It's about respect. It's about like a mutual respect and showing love and helping this kid grow into a productive and healthy adult. And so we have to allow our child to grow, and the boundaries must grow with them within the constraints of their age range and what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. Um, so that, as well as allowing some options. So when we set boundaries, usually we think like, we're just kind of cutting things off and you could do this or nothing. But when it comes to kids, they're already at such a disadvantage and already feel so out of control. And so sometimes you'll notice when kids rebel or act out, it's because like their parents don't give them any type of options whatsoever. um so I think it is important for you to allow some options for your kids and just kind of pick your battles. Like, do you want to control every aspect of this, or do you want to allow your kids to um, be learn to be independent and make healthy choices and um, set boundaries for themselves and know their limits and trust their instincts. So, for example, with allowing for some options, like I think a big one is like with food. A lot of parents kind of go back and forth with their kids about eating and about food. You're gonna eat this or nothing else. At least give them an option to like eat a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or something. Like, I'm not saying you have to cook a whole separate meal for a child, but have, a variety of options so that they don't feel like their feelings don't matter or their opinions don't matter or what they like doesn't matter. But then also setting boundaries to be like, hey, like, I'm not cooking an extra meal. So if you don't want what I've cooked, then you can eat cereal or you can eat a sandwich. And that way you're still setting boundaries. Like, you have to eat what's here. Like, we're not going out and buying something else. And I'm not taking extra time out of my evening to make you something, but you can't have this. So if that makes sense, hopefully that does. Um, Okay. Also, be direct and be specific. So, children are not little adults. So, I think sometimes we think that they understand everything that we want to be done, but we have to be very specific and very clear with what we are expecting and what we are needing from them. And so, you have to just make it plain and give eye contact and be very specific and detailed in what you want them to do. And that is going to help with that boundary, so that they can't kind of manipulate the boundary and say, oh, well, you said this, you didn't say that. That's how they get you. So be very specific and clear in what it is that you want and ask for what you need. And also consider, can this 8-year-old do that? Can this 4-year-old do that? Are they developmentally capable of being able to do that? Sometimes we think, well, yes, she does know, or yes, she can do this, but it's just not always that simple. I think that is so important I think every parent should take like a child development class. I think that would help a whole lot in how we view kids and what they know and their capabilities. And then the last one that I would say is to just be consistent and follow through with what you say you're going to do. I don't know how many times I've had parents sit in my office and say, well, if you don't do this, I'm going to take away your video games. And the child does whatever it is that they told him not to do. And the kid is still playing the video games. What? Okay, so you're just showing them that you don't follow through with what you say, so they can't take you seriously as a parent. So you just kind of ruined your authority. And then you can't turn around and, spank them or, like do, because you have to follow through with what you say. So if I say I'm going to take something away from my kids, I do that. Or if I say, you have one more time and you're going to have to go to bed, after that one more time, they're going to bed. And it's not being mean. And it's, I think I've gotten to the point in my parenthood that I'm not scared of my kids not liking me or thinking that I'm mean. I think they know that I love them. And I think some parents worry about that. Like, I don't want my child to be mad at me. Being mad is a normal feeling and it's okay. We have to normalize that as well, that it's okay for people to be mad at us and not like what we do. We shouldn't force people to just be happy and like take whatever. Um so just know that um you know when we say we're going to do something, we have to stick to it, or our kids are not going to take it seriously. And then also, that's just being an example for them. So they're not going to follow through with what they say. So if you say that you're going to reward them for getting good grades, and then they bring you their report card and it's significantly better than what it was last time, and you don't get them that reward, that ruins the relationship. And they're going to push boundaries even further because now they're going to be like, well, that didn't work, so I'm going to try something else. So those are just some ways to set boundaries with your kids. um Next, I want to talk a little bit about setting boundaries in your marriage, and this can really go for like dating or for marriage. And I'm going to talk about dating next too, but these can kind of work like um they can work like all they work for both. Okay, so um the first one is just be clear and specific in what you are needing. So if you have a certain idea in your head of what you are expecting from your spouse or significant other, then you have to say that. Like, I counsel people who are married, and I'm always telling people, like, you have to ask for what you need. Like, we're not mind readers and we're not fortune tellers. So, you have to be clear and specific in what you are asking for and telling them what you are needing. Um, you also have to, again, in marriage, not just with kids, but in marriage as well, you have to follow through with what you say you're going to do. So in some of my couples that they fuss and fight, or somebody's cheating, or somebody's not doing what they're supposed to do, and you say, if you do this again, I'm going to leave, but then you don't leave, then that shows that person that they can continue to cheat, they can continue to lie, they can continue to do XYZ. So, people are only going to treat you how you allow them to. And so you have to follow through with what you say you are going to do as well. So if you're going to leave, then leave. If you're going to stay, then, do what needs to be done to make it work so that there's not all this, stress and drama. So um, be firm with your core values. I think often when we get married or we get into a relationship, period, I think sometimes it's easy to neglect our core values and beliefs, and that can cause a lot of um, overstepping of the boundaries. If we're not firm in our values, if we're not aligned with our values, and maybe our spouse or our partner is not in a line, like they may have different values, because everybody has different values. Even if you're married to that person, y'all are two different people, so you may have different values. Making sure that you are in alignment with your values, and making sure that your spouse understands what's valuable to you as well, and they decide from there if they can meet that expectation or meet that need. And if not, that's okay. But then you have to set boundaries and say, well, okay, well, if you can't do this, then I need you to do this. Or if you can't do this at all, then, that might be a deal breaker for me. Or, how can we come up with some sort of compromise so that we can continue in, having a healthy marriage that's not just one sided. Um, so be firm with your core values, and being clear about what those are. And those things may change. So, you have some people that they've been married for like 20 years. And so they're totally different people from when they were like, a teenager or a young adult. And, it's 20 years later and they've kind of grown. They're both growing, but they're growing in different directions. And so it's important for you to recognize, like, have my values changed, and have I communicated that to my spouse or my partner so that they know like what I stand for or what I don't. um, and then also seek individual therapy as well as couples counseling. So if you're struggling in with boundaries in your marriage, um, or with other issues in your marriage, like, I highly recommend that people don't just go to couples counseling. Usually people think that just fixes everything, but it doesn't. A lot of times it's the individual problems that are affecting each person that needs to be dealt with on their own. Like, we are two different people. We have to have two whole people together to create like a stable relationship. You can't have like a one and a half or three-fourths and a quarter. Like, it just doesn't work that way, and it's going to constantly cause conflict. And so you want to seek out individual therapy as well as couples counseling. So that's very important. And then in those therapy sessions, you can work on setting boundaries with your therapist, to help you to figure out the best way to communicate with your spouse and set clear boundaries, or to compromise or to learn how to communicate better. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so moving on to dating. Like I said, some of these things that I talked about in marriage are things that you could use in dating too. But dating is, especially I think during this day and age, like, my friends and people that I know that are single, that are in this dating world, they say that it's definitely a struggle out here. So my heart goes out to all the people, who are dating and just kind of struggling with all navigating the world of dating. Um, so one thing in particular that I said with boundary setting as it relates to dating is to discuss the hard topics early on. So people tend to, when you're in that like honeymoon phase of dating and you really like the person and you really want this to work, and especially I think maybe for some people that may really want to be married, or they may really just want to be in a relationship, they might be more apt to accept things that they wouldn't normally accept because they think, oh, well, I'm getting older, so I'm probably not going to find anybody else, so I can deal with this. It's okay. When in actuality, it's really not. So we have to put everything out on the table in the beginning, and you need to talk about the hard discussions, like whether that be finances, whether that be expectations as far as like sex, um, whether, about domestic violence, about, I mean, just anything that would be like a deal breaker for you, religious views, just all of those things, role expectations in the house, like all of those things are so important. And those, like, do you want to have kids? How many kids do you want to have? Like, those are some topics that you will be surprised a lot of people do not discuss. And I'm like, huh? Like, how did you get to the altar without talking about that one? It surprises me all the time, and it shouldn't surprise me, but I'm just like, what do you expect? Like when you don't talk about these things, they're not just gonna go away. And you're just not gonna magically change this person's mind or hope that this person, wants the same thing as you. So we have to discuss the hard topics early on, and we have to learn how to say no. And I said this earlier, no is an answer. So even if you had sex with the person multiple times before, if you don't want to have sex with this person tonight, then no means no. And we have to accept people's boundaries too. A lot of us feel entitled, like, oh, because I've done this and this and this for you, then you should do this, or you shouldn't have these boundaries. People do that in dating, they do that in families, they do that in friendships. No means no. We're in sexual assault awareness month. Like, okay, it's serious. So, um, learn to say no. Learn to stop letting red flags just slip on by, and good and darn well that that's not something that you would normally accept. um and just because somebody is cute or pretty or they have this other attribute doesn't mean, like, you're gonna have to really weigh, what is this going to look like in a few years if I stay with this person? Is this something that I can accept? And if you cannot, then you're going to have to set that boundary and say, look, this, I can't deal with this. And you have to, and that person then has to say, well, okay, I can deal with that. I can fix that. I could work on that. Or they can say, well, I'm not willing to bend for that. So this relationship might not be the best thing. And that's okay. You don't have to sacrifice your values or your needs in order to be in a relationship. Somebody will be with you, or I'd rather you be by yourself, really, instead of like pushing all of your values to the side just to be with somebody and letting somebody walk all over you just to be with somebody. That's not worth it. And that's not the type of relationship I think that you would want. Um, so those are some of my tips for setting boundaries when you're dating. Um, so setting boundaries with friends and family, this one can be very tough, especially when you have maybe like a close knit family, or you have friends that you've been friends with since you were like elementary school. A lot of people tend to overstep their boundaries. Um, so, one of the big things that I would say, and thank you to those who are joining, and please like, share, comment, subscribe. So, we're talking about setting boundaries. So, now we're on friends and family. So typically this is probably one of the hardest things because we love our friends and our family and we don't want them to be mad at us, or sometimes they can be quite manipulative and make us feel bad for setting boundaries. Um, but you don't have to feel bad for, um, you know, just making people respect you or telling people, hey, that's not right. I don't like that. Or, I can't do that right now. So one of the tips that I have for setting boundaries with family and friends is don't tell them about your relationship problems. I think that is huge. And that kind of goes, that couples in with the marriage thing and the dating thing, even in dating. If you're gonna stay with somebody when you're dating, please don't tell your parents or your family, that y'all are having problems, because if you stay with that person, you're gonna get all kinds of side eyes, or attitude or things like that. So like just keep it to yourself if you're not going to set your boundaries and be consistent with your own boundaries in that relationship. But keep your family and friends out of your personal business. And if it's something that's really serious, you may just want to talk to a therapist about it, because the therapist is going to be non-biased. But friends and family, they never forget. and they're going to think about that all the time. So, um, I would also say, um, I think one big thing that is very hard for people is when they have to stop talking to family and friends for whatever reason. Either the person is saying inappropriate things, or this person is hurting another member of your family, or this person kind of condones or didn't protect you from somebody in your family. So, like, for example, so people who have been sexually abused may struggle with like kind of drawing that line in the sand with their family, because they might still go over to grandma's house for holidays, and their abuser is still there, like their abuser is still hanging out with the family. And so that could be very hard for some people. Sometimes boundary setting includes actually verbalizing things, and sometimes boundary setting means that you have to separate, like you have to physically remove yourself from that unhealthy, toxic environment. And that can be very hard for some people, because you don't want to lose the connections that you have. You just want that piece to go away. But um everybody is different. I know for me, like, I've had to make difficult choices as far as like just setting boundaries and like not talking to certain family members. And I know that that's very hard for some people, but I've just recognized that my peace is more important. And like, I don't have any like ill will or anything like that, but like, I just know what comes with having to have a relationship, at least at this point. Now that may change in the future, but I think we really have to consider our mental health, our physical health when setting these boundaries. And just because somebody is family doesn't mean that you necessarily have to let them in your circle and let them overstep the boundaries. So I just think that that's something that's um important to establish, is that sometimes their family and friends are sometimes the hardest ones to set boundaries with, and they will push and push and push. And but you have to stand firm. And if you don't want to do something, if you're trying to establish your own traditions, like especially for like new couples, and sometimes family may expect for you to like spend time with them over here or spend time with them over here. And you could just say, hey, no, we're going to have Christmas at my house. We're going to open up gifts at my house, or no, we're going to have Thanksgiving over here. And that may be difficult for some families to accept, because they're used to doing things their way. But especially like if you're a new family trying to start your own traditions, you're going to have to set boundaries and just kind of stand up for yourself and say, hey, like, we will, or even if you still want to like have that interaction, but you just want to have some things for yourself, you can say, I can do this, but I won't do that. So I think it's important for us to tell people, like, if we don't necessarily want to say no, because we don't all the way feel like a no, you could just say, I can do this, but I won't do that, period. And they can take it or leave it. So that's my tips for dealing with friends and family. Even like, especially with spending, I think spending is another issue, because sometimes a family or friends may think that we have money to spend. Like, they have an idea of maybe how your finances might be. So they might try to manipulate you into buying certain things for other family members, or putting certain responsibility on you because maybe you have like a higher paying job or something like that. So it's important for you to say no as well. I knew somebody that they were like a professional athlete, and their family really overstepped boundaries with that. And they were paying for folks to go to college and paying for XYZ, all the things. And that's really nice, but that's really pushing the boundaries. And I think sometimes people will use certain family members, um, or friends may think that, oh, so and so has it. So, they may foot you with the bill at the end of the night if y'all go out. So, standing up for people and saying like, hey, like that's not cool, or no, I'm not comfortable with that, or that's not in my budget. So I won't be doing that at this time. And just being very clear with people, about what you can and cannot do, or what you will and will not do as it relates to like your finances or even your time or anything like that. Even with your kids, I know sometimes like grandparents may overstep their boundaries. Um, like buying certain things for the grandchild that maybe the parent doesn't want them to have. It's like, oh, well, your mama won't get it for you, but I'll get it for you. That's usurping that parent's authority, and that's not okay. And so, with that, and then sometimes that makes it hard because the parent is like, well, dang, I don't want to look like the bad mean parent, because this grandparent has bought them this toy. I don't want to take it away from them. But the child suffers at the end of the day. So it's important to just have those hard, uncomfortable discussions with their family and say, hey, I don't want so and so to have a video game because they haven't been doing well in school. And I need for all of us to be on the same page that you're not going to buy them this video game. And then if that family member does not respect the boundary, then you will have to decide from there. Are you going to, um, you know, allow your child to continue to go over there? Are you going to maybe still allow them, but just limit the time, it, the time as far as how long they spend together or whatever? Or are you going to take the bullet and make them give the toy back? Those are just very hard, and there's no one size fits all for anybody. Like, these are things that you will have to ultimately decide for yourself, because at the end of the day, like, I know what I am comfortable with doing, but as for y'all, every family is different, every person is different. So your boundaries work for you and mine work for me. So you're just going to have to figure out what is the best formula for you as far as setting boundaries with friends and family. um so even like just being clear, even on things that I didn't think about, like, um if you have godparents, like, what does that look like? Like, how involved are your godparents going to be in your child's life? Um, for other family members, like as far as discipline, like what are the boundaries as far as disciplining your kids? So those are all things that we have to really think about, and then just be very specific and be very clear. And then for the people on the opposite ends that the boundaries are being set with, we have to accept that people have their own way of doing things. And even though we were taught a certain way, or we have lived our lives a certain way, if somebody implements a boundary with us, it's not our job to debate You just need to say, okay. And even if you don't understand it, okay, I don't understand the boundary right now, but it's your boundary, and I will respect it. And that's really what we have to do. You shouldn't try to like manipulate your way through and try to make the person feel guilty for setting the boundary. You just need to say, okay, and deal with whatever emotions you have going on internally about them setting that boundary with you. You're gonna have to deal with that in therapy, or just kind of take time to process that, because boundaries have to be set, and we may not always understand them or agree with them. Just like, there's rules maybe at your job or rules in your family, or there's even laws that we don't really understand. And so, but we have to respect those, or else, there are consequences. So accept other people's boundaries, or there's going to be consequences, and usually it's going to be a strain in the relationship. We have about 10 minutes left. I was going to talk briefly about setting boundaries on social media, because I think that that is a huge one, since we are in the social media age, technology age. A lot of people overshare on social media, and that is one thing that I would say with setting boundaries is don't overshare. Sometimes I think we put way too much on social media. I look back at some of my posts from like when I was in college, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I cringe, y'all. Like, I cringe so hard, and I delete them because I'm like, that is not funny and not cute at all. Like, yeah, like sometimes we put too much on social media, whether we share, like, I'm all for like people bringing awareness to certain things, whether that be your mental health or physical health issues, that's fine, But, sometimes people overshare things or post things on social media about their status, whether it's their mental health status or their relationship status. And I feel like um, it does one of two things. It makes people feel like they know you or have access to you. It makes them be a little bit too familiar. And so, like, a perfect example is like, even with Jada Pinkett and Will Smith, Jada Pinkett Smith and Will Smith. Jada has talked about their relationship on social media for the world to see. And that has made people very familiar and very comfortable with talking about their relationship. So when you open up that door, like, that's why I've tried to stay away from like talking about my marriage in detail on social media. You will only see me or hear me say like funny things, or like how proud I am and things like that. Because when you let people in, like, people will use it against you later, or it kind of opens up the door for conflicts to happen that probably wouldn't be there, or the brunt of the hit wouldn't be as difficult if other people weren't viewing this. So you see people arguing and cussing each other out on social media, or saying they broke up with so and so, or talking bad about their significant other on social media, and then they get back with that person. Well, that's a poor boundary, because you violated your relationship, number one, and now all of us want to know, well, what happened next? It's like a soap opera. We want to know what happened too. We're invested in this too. So don't overshare. Same thing with like like posting. And other people may disagree with me, but this is just my personal opinion. I don't feel like people should post what they have. Like, I'm very particular about showing, my home and everything that's in it, and showing my cars, and like, because number one, we're in a pandemic, and a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are struggling anyway. So it's like, people are happy. I mean, people can be happy for you, but most people don't care if they're struggling as well. And also, it opens you up for a lot of people to be jealous hearted, and try to harm you. We've seen it happen where rappers will show like these big wads of money and cash and things, and jewelry on their social media, and then what happens? They get robbed. So it's just so important for us to set boundaries, not only with other people but with ourselves. And you might be really excited about sharing this piece of news, or sharing, this new purse that you have, or sharing, that your baby got, you know, straight A's or whatever. But, it's just be careful. Like, if you're gonna do it, just be mindful. Even like with sharing negative things about either your kids, or a family member, or your spouse, like, just be mindful that when you do that, that is setting poor well, it's having poor boundaries with the rest of us. So we feel like we know you, and we feel like we can give our 2 cents on your relationship, or we feel like we already know that your child is bad, or your child is this or that, before we even meet them, because you put it out there on social media. So just be mindful of that. Anybody have any comments or any questions? We have like 3 more minutes left. But I hope that something that I talked about today was helpul to you. There's a couple of books that I suggest, um, for people who are struggling with boundaries. So the first book is Boundaries by Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Townsend. Um, they actually have multiple books. So there's boundaries in marriage, there's boundaries with kids, there's boundaries in dating, and there's boundaries in leadership. So I have all those books in my office. And so I highly recommend those books as well. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you for watching. And then another book that I have, that I recommend, is Set Boundaries, Find Peace by Nidra Glover Tawwab. She was actually on Red Table Talk, go figure. And she did a really good episode on setting boundaries. So if you haven't watched that, I highly recommend you go watch that Red Table Talk about boundaries, because Miss Nidra is on that episode. But this book is really good. And then also, she has a workbook that she just came out with in December, that accompanies the book. I hope that you guys get the books and apply some of the things that we talked about today in your everyday life. And I hope that it blesses you, and you feel healthier and happier in your relationships, and just as an individual. Um, yes, I could post them in the comments when I log off. So thank you guys so much for watching. And next week, I hope to have somebody on to talk about Sexual Assault Awareness Month, because April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and it's almost over. So I wanted to at least talk a little bit about that in our next episode. So I hope to see you then. Thank you so much for watching. If you need to get in contact with me, here's my information. You could call me at 318-759-7865. You can also schedule an appointment online at jlcounselingllc.com. And you can follow and like me on Facebook and Instagram at JL Counseling LLC. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, JL Counseling. Thank you so much for watching, and y'all have a good night. Bye.